So hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a big video, just in terms of research and recording and editing and whatnot. So I forgot to film an intro, so here we are. It's no secret that I love The Walking Dead. It's my favourite show of all time. Duh. Actually, hang on, no, I gotta stand up to show you this shirt properly because it is, look at this, obsessed. But I started reactions around season 6 on my channel, and I have rewatched the show, I want to say 3 or 4 times straight through from start to finish in my whole time of loving the show. I rewatch season 3 and 4 a lot because they're my favourites. I rewatch season 6 and 7 a lot because I quite like them too. But I recently, in the last few months, have been slowly making my way through the show again. And I thought it would be so fun to do a whole series overview. So this video is going to take you from season 1 right up to season 11. Give you the basic plot points of each season, the basic characters that come in and out, the big deaths, the big new communities that we meet. It's like a summary of the show, or a way to explain it to somebody who's never seen it before, but I wouldn't phrase it that way because I'm terrible at explaining things, and even people that have seen the show are probably going to find certain parts of this a bit difficult to follow along with because it's me. But I've seen videos like this before online of I watched every episode of whatever the show may be. And they're so fun to watch. It's so fun to go back and reminisce and talk about the show season by season, character by character. So yeah, that is what this video is going to be about. I filmed it over a course of I think a week because I love The Walking Dead, but I cannot sit down and record for that long on one topic anymore. My brain just... And it did take a while to research as well, and I researched season by season. So there's a lot of outfit changes, costume changes. I'm not an actor, sadly. There's a lot of outfit changes going on throughout this video, so that's why, because I filmed it on different days. As I'm recording this intro, I'm still in the process of editing the video, actually, so we're really all over the place. Just reminding you guys, if you haven't checked out this week's episode of the Reactorverse podcast, then be sure to do so. It is the first link in the description down below if you want to hear me talk about The Walking Dead, how I started my channel, all of that fun stuff. I was lucky enough to be on a guest this week. I was not on a guest. No, I wasn't. I was the guest. I wasn't on no one. The link to that is in the description down below. Actually, I think when I post this, it won't be the most current episode of the Reactorverse, because I'm probably posting this a week from now, maybe. Anyway, the link to my episode of that podcast is down below. So if you want to check that out, listen to me talk about this, that, and the other, click the link. Also, the link to my Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, where there's a bunch of other content that goes on over there, whole bunch of stuff. The links to all them is down below if you want to find me anywhere. Check the description. Well, yeah, that's it. Okay, I think I covered everything in that intro. Did I? I don't know. Well, nah. Let's go. So there's this fun thing going on at the moment where every time I turn down my ring light, my mic stops working. So I hope to God I don't look deathly pale, and if I do, well... So, we open with Rick. Poor son of a bitch wakes up alone in a hospital room, 28 days later style. He gets up out the bed, slaps off the ground. He's walking around half naked in his hospital gown trying to figure out what the hell's going on because, you know, the first thing he sees when he wakes up and turns over is a bunch of dead flowers. So he thinks, oh my God, nobody's been to visit me. He sees traces of stuff that's happened that's not good. I mean, he sees the bullet holes all along the wall, like a firing squad had been fucking around. You see the Don't Dead open inside doors, the iconic doors. Where is it? There it is. Iconic. Last time I made that joke, people didn't get it and they corrected me. They were like, it's Don't Open Dead Inside. So he goes off trying to like bicycle his way around town, trying to find anybody. No one's around the place. He meets Bicycle Girl, the half-dead creature hanging onto the grass, robs her bike. His face throughout this whole ordeal is absolutely comical. He is simply taking every moment as it happens. Then he gets boinked into the face with a shovel. Here he meets Morgan and Dwayne. Morgie Boy becomes a very big player. We meet him later on in The Walking Dead, and later than that, he skips on over to Fear the Walking Dead. Fantastic character, fantastically written and amazing. Just, oh my God, Lenny James. Anyway, they give him the lowdown and everything that happened. Don't get bit, what happens if you get bit, the basics, if you will. We see Morgan's wife stumble up to the door and try the doorknob to get into the house. He hasn't been able to bring himself to put her down yet. Something similar happens with his son. We don't see it in The Walking Dead, but in Fear the Walking Dead, we learn, if you're not up to date with Fear, spoilers. With Fear the Walking Dead, we learn that Dwayne died and Morgan couldn't put him down, couldn't bring himself to do it, and he returns to that house and has to kill Walkified Dwayne. The Walking Dead does that a lot. There's a lot of throwbacks to earlier things that you see in maybe the first 3 or 4 seasons of The Walking Dead. You see remnants or hints of that pop up in later seasons. It even bleeds into spin-off shows, which is just beautiful. Anyway, Rick then goes about his life trying to find his family. He ends up locked in a tank where he nearly dies, but he doesn't. He's saved by Glenn, the pizza delivery guy. From there we go on, we meet a group, and that group is just so happens to be the group that also contains his family. He reunites with his son and his wife. We find out that the one that saved his ass back when he woke up in the hospital, oh my god, I forgot to mention, the reason like nobody got into his room is because there was a bed put in front of the door to protect him. That bed was put there by his bestie, Shane. That very bestie decided after Rick's presumed death, Shane was like, okay, well, I'll get his family out of here, I'll save his family, and then I'm going to shag his wife, and he did. Now listen, Laurie catches a lot of shit from fans. I'm not that big of a fan of her character. She was good, and she had a lot of very good moments throughout her time on the show, but just personally, I mean, I wasn't her number one stan or anything. But to be fair to her, she did think Rick was dead. That's kind of what Shane led her to believe, you know. Anyway, her and Shane doing the freaky deaky. I don't know, man. Shane is a real tough one for me. Shane is, or was, Rick's best friend. He was a complex one. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. But shagging your dead best friend's wife, that motherfucker deserved death. Speaking of Laurie, you may know her from iconic moments such as Coral, and also Prison Break, which was like my favourite show growing up. I fucking love Sarah Wayne Callies. She is such a chill person. That wasn't in my... Oh, by the way, I have notes, which is why I keep looking down. I should probably try and hold it up a bit so I don't spend the whole video like reading my notes. We then meet absolute king of my heart, Daryl Dixon. Favourite character ever. If the saturation on this camera doesn't stop playing with me, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. Stop. So Daryl finds out, right, that his brother was earlier chained to a roof by T-Dog, and the keys were dropped down the smallest hole you've ever seen in your life, and Merle was just kind of left there. So Daryl naturally throws a necklace full of dead rodents at Rick and then gets pummeled to the ground. They go on to become besties, but you know, what an introduction, Daryl. Daryl all throughout season 1 and season 2 is very quiet. He's very much keeps to himself. I think he fucks off in season 2 when they move to the farm. I'm getting ahead of myself, but in season 2 when they move to the farm, he like lives by himself on the outskirts of the farm. He is Mr. Lone Wolf. And Merle, like, listen, he's basically a cunt. We all know it. He was a terrible brother to Daryl, but like he was such a good character in terms of he is the prime example of what Daryl should have ended up being, and probably, maybe, would have ended up being had the apocalypse not happened. Because he just kind of Daryl just kind of followed Merle. Daryl just kind of followed Merle around the place. You know, very baby brother-like. So it's interesting seeing how different the two of them are, and how closely bonded they were simply because they didn't have anyone else before the apocalypse. Let me just say, Rooker is an absolutely fantastic actor. I just love that man. He's Mary fucking Poppins, y'all. But as his time as Merle Dixon, he was incredible. And Merle's arc is an interesting one. He's the kind of character that just always does the thing that's going to enrage you until his death. His death, to me, it wasn't redeeming him. It didn't redeem him as a character or anything, because I don't think he really could. But like his death was satisfying and nice. That's a weird thing to say. So Dale Face is a huge prominent part of the season. Dale is part of the survivor group that we've met. I absolutely adore Dale. There's also Andrea and her sister Amy. Amy doesn't last very long though. Amy gets bit to fucking dies. There's that guy. Oh my god, what's his name? The guy that gets bitten, they leave by a tree. They're coming for me. What's his name? It sucks that I can't remember his name because his death actually was quite prominent. He was one of the first examples of us having that moral dilemma of what do we do? Do we kill him? Do we just let him die? What do we do? They leave him by a tree, and we all know what happens when you get left by a tree and you're on death's door. So at the end of the season, the group finally end up achieving their goal, which was to get to the CDC, see what the fuck is up. They get there, they meet Dr. Jenner. He gives them the brief rundown. We see the x-ray of his wife. Well, we find out she's his wife. He talks a little bit about the reanimation process, how long it takes. He is an interesting character. He also shows up in not behind the scenes. He's not just lurking on set. He shows up in a after credits scene for World Beyond, which I thought was really fun. I love it when the shows share characters, when they just pass them around. They're like, here, do you want this guy we had back in season 1? Take him. It'll be a real fun throwback. And it is. So they almost get locked into the CDC because it goes into lockdown. Daryl, despite his best efforts of getting super violent with the door, they can't get out. They nearly die, but they don't. Carol saves the day with the grenade that she just so happened to keep. We get out of the building. Jackie chooses to stay behind because she's like, I do not want to face that world. And you know what? I don't blame her. Super, super sad moment though. Seeing someone choose that fate over whatever the hell lies outside the doors, it really sets the tone for the show. Andrea tries to stay and Dale's like, not on my watch. Cops a squat in front of her and is like, fine, well then if you stay, I stay. So then out of guilt, she's like, fine, I guess we'll fucking live another day. So then it ends with the CDC being blown the fuck up and Rick learns from Jenner that once we die, we all turn. Anyway, we are shagged. He doesn't share that with the group or with us for another little bit, but just letting you know, that's what happens when Jenner pulls him in and whispers in his ear. So some of the standouts from season 1 for me is the fact that there isn't really a clear villain. There's villainous characters. There's characters that you meet that you're like, oh yeah, they're not necessarily good people, are they? But there's no like formula to the show that it has in later seasons. In later seasons, it really settles into the groove of there's a threat. Oh my god, who is the threat? Oh, they're scary. Then we meet them. They're bad. We kill them. But in season 1, we didn't have any of that really. The walkers were the prime threat. They were the bad guys. They were the ones that were popping up round corners and lurking around the place and in their way into all of our nightmares. I mean, I guess like you could maybe argue that Shane is a villain. I mean, he does certainly take on villainous traits and my guy goes spiraling in season 2. We will get there. We will get there. But you do start to see traces of it in season 1. I love the grittiness of season 1. I loved how it looked visually. I loved... Shut up, please. I loved the vibes. I loved the tension. I loved the drama. You gotta love Triangle. When you start the show and in the first 6 episodes you get zombies, explosions, love triangles. I mean, like, what more do you want? What more do you want? Well, whatever it is more that you want, wait, you're probably going to get it in later seasons. This show throws everything at the wall and I love it. So the walkers in season 1 is something that's become a hot topic again in recent times because my camera is still changing saturation. Bitch! Stop it! So we see walkers in season 1 act an awful lot different to how they do in later seasons. You see walkers climbing fences. You see walkers running. You see walkers trying doors. Hello, Jenny. People have argued now with the introduction of the idea of variants in the later seasons of The Walking Dead. People have argued that, well, maybe they were variants back then. And I'm like, that theory does make sense and it does completely check out knowing what we know now. But I don't think that's what that is. It's just the showrunner at the time had a different outlook on the show. They had a different plan and route that the show was going to take. It just changed over the first few formative seasons. It's cool though to try and explain it away with just variants. Makes more sense than, you know, they were runners and climbers and now they're not anymore, okay? Let's pretend we never saw them. We know that Frank Darabont's vision for the show was an awful lot different to how it progressed into. Another standout for me is I really, really liked how character driven it was, how personable all the characters were. There was a different personality for everyone. You know what I'm saying? There was such a wide range of people that I liked that, and I liked how it really was a drama. It was a person-driven drama. The walkers were there. Yeah, they were there. But it's really based on the people and the decisions that you make and the people. I also really liked the CDC scene with Jenner where he was describing how reanimation works and then you find out it's his wife and it's like, oh, what a dark moment this has become. So that was season 1 in a nutshell. Yes, there's things I'm probably leaving out or forgetting, but we're doing a general synopsis of each season with a few standout moments. Otherwise, I will be here for the rest of my life. Season 2 brings the introduction of probably one of my favourite families that we see in the earlier days of the show, the Green family. We end up on Herschel's farm where we meet the Greens. There's Herschel, Beth, Maggie, and there are others, but I'm pretty sure they all die or they don't make it out of the season. And I didn't really get attached to any of the other Greens, so. Controversial take, I think that this season is one of my least favourites, which I know will have people instantly yelling at me in the comments and telling me how wrong I am, and I just simply don't care. I love the setting of it, I think it's fun, but I feel like it's a season that simultaneously moves too fast and also moves too slow. It just confuses me. So this is the season of missing Sophia. Sophia, who is Carol's daughter, who we met back in season 1. She was one of the main survivors. Remember, she had the grenade that saved the day. Queen of the apocalypse. Let me just say, I adore her. And her character arc from season 1 to 11 and beyond is just, it's impeccable storytelling. We find out that Laurie is also pregnant, which poses the question, who's the daddy? because she was sleeping with Shane and then Rick came back and they had some freaky deaky. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it was ever actually proven who the father was, because you can prove it in this day and age, in this storyline's universe. Yeah, it could be either Shane's or Rick's biologically, but Judith was 100% Rick Grimes' daughter. He raised her, he cared for her, he was her dad. So let's just put that out there and put that the fuck to rest. We also find out that that barn on the farm that we've just moved into, full of walkers, yeah, full of the dead. Herschel couldn't bring himself to kill him, locked them all in the barn. How can this go wrong? Glenn and Maggie get together, they hook up in a pharmacy. They go on to become one of my favourite goddamn couples. I love them. Maggie's another character that really comes into her own. Started off as just the farmer's daughter and ended up becoming the widow, which is now a very sad name when you think about it. Otis is then shot by Shane because Shane needs a distraction. Shane is a ruthless motherfucker and was like, Otis, pow! And then lets the walkers get distracted by him so he can get away because he is medicine for Coral. You can argue he did what he had to do to save Carol's life, but like, that's dark. Anyway, yeah, remember that Walker barn? That fun little room of death? Guess who comes stumbling out after forever searching for her? Poor little Sophia stumbles out of that barn, and that, at that point of time in the show, was the most messed up, horrific, heartbreaking thing that I had seen. My little eyes were scarred. The shot that we get of Carol on the floor absolutely going into pieces is one of the most haunting moments, and it's the bitterness of knowing she was in there all along. We were holding out hope. We were making signs, leaving one on the highway. We were running around the place. It was so messed up to find out that she had been there and dead all along. Rick kills Shane, and then Coral has this big dramatic moment where it looks like he's going to shoot Rick. He's going to shoot his dad, but he's not. He shoots past him and puts down Walker Shane. So we had two Grimeses kill a Shane that day. Dale also dies somewhere along those episodes. He gets bit by a walker that Coral accidentally got like unstuck from some mud. It's very much the domino effect or the butterfly effect. Everything has a knock-on effect on the next thing. The poor bloody farm doesn't make it out of the season. The farm gets all burnt and fucked up. The season ends with everybody kind of splitting up to get away from the farm. There's walkers everywhere. It is absolute chaos. Andrea somehow ends up isolated from everyone else, and then she fucks off with Michonne, who ends up, I can't say enough about her character. Michonne might be one of my favourite female leads from any show of all time. But yeah, so that's where that storyline starts. Oh, yeah, Dale died. Wait, did I mention that? I did, but I talked more about the walker than Dale. Fuck. Dale died, and we loved Dale. We loved Daleface. He had, like, bonded with Andrea. He had made this, like, father-daughter... Oh, my mouth. He had stuck up this father-daughter kind of bond with Andrea, even though she was like, I don't want that, I wanted to die and you're pissing me off, not my dad. But he was a very interesting character. I mean, like, you know, you see him sitting up on top of the RV, keeping an eye out on things, trying to keep things level. He was somewhat of a father figure, but once Herschel entered the show, it's like, well, there can only be one. There can only be one father figure at a time, so Herschel walks on in, and Dale then died. I know there was more going on behind the scenes as to why he was written off the show. I am aware. This was also the season where we got the iconic "You shoot me again, you best pray I'm dead" line from Daryl, because Andrea shoots him and then is so damn pleased with herself because she thought she shot a walker. No, it just turns out it was a very, 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 very rough looking Daryl who stumbled out the forest with a necklace filled with ears. He'd been going through it down in like the swamps. He fell down, got himself impaled on an arrow, and then hallucinated his brother taking the piss out of him the entire climb back up the hill to get out of this ditch he was in. I actually really liked that scene, and it's I think it told you a lot about Daryl, that in that moment it was his brother he hallucinated taking the piss out of him to get him up the hill. Some standouts for this season was Well Walker, absolutely gross. Shane was also a standout, and he wasn't one of my favourites. The first time I watched the show, he used to kind of annoy me. Not gonna lie, every time he was on screen I was like, this motherfucker. But each time I rewatched the show, I feel like I warmed to him so much. I think, right, you have to have a certain kind of darkness in you to go dark side. I think he just had a little bit too much, yeah? He went too dark too fast. I mean, with the apocalypse, there's a period of like change and like adaptation that you have to do to fit into this new world. Shane just flipped that switch too fucking quick, and I think that is what led to his downfall. He went too dark and then couldn't really put himself back. He just kind of lost it. You have a lot of people arguing that Rick kind of ended up in the similar cold, harsh mind space that Shane did in later seasons for Rick, which I don't agree with. Rick does have his moments throughout the show, do not get me wrong, and we will touch on them. Rick does have his moments of, what the fuck are you doing, Grimes boy? But Shane was so direct and to the point and so ruthless in the pursuit of getting what he wanted or what he perceived as right, that, I mean, it was shocking. For a season 2 viewer, if you go back to the first time you ever watched The Walking Dead and go to the moment where he shoots Otis in order to escape with the medicine for Coral, It is shocking to see someone be that brutal that early on in. I mean, this is coming from the same guy that was like, hey, Laurie, Rick's dead. You want some fuck? But he is a fascinating character to go back and rewatch. He really is. People have also argued that if we had followed Shane from the beginning of the show, if Shane had become the leader, if Shane had won that night in the field and he'd become the leader instead of Rick and Rick had died, where would we have been? And my answer to that is I think we would have died somewhere mid-season 3, because Shane would have either done some crazy shit as a leader that led to just all of us being killed, or he would have bailed on the group, or he would have done something that seriously compromised the group, and in the end, I personally believe he would have just saved his own skin. So the first 2 seasons, we already have a lot of the original core group that we have met dead. And my God, does it just continue to get grimmer from there. By the end of the show, like everyone you've ever seen is fucking dead. But I like that about the show. I like that they take risks. Nobody's safe. It's a show about zombies. You go into the show knowing it's about death. Characters that you like, characters that you get attached to are gonna fucking die. And if you don't like that, then I don't really get why you'd be watching a zombie apocalyptic show. The farm going up in smoke as well is we're 2 seasons in and we already have had 2 establishments that we went to stay at be blown the fuck up or burnt to shit. And it follows that pattern moving forward. Okay, it is day 2 of recording this video and we are going on to season 3. So we're skipping forward a few months timeline wise, and we can tell that time has passed, that it's been a few months because of Laurie's belly. Laurie is now like very visibly pregnant. We have very little food, very little supplies. Desperate times call for desperate measures. It's really bleak. No one's happy. Everyone is just fucking miserable. And then enter stage left, my favourite set from The Walking Dead, the prison. This is where the prison arc begins. I just loved everything about this. I don't know why. That's a lie. I do know why. Prison Break was like my favourite show growing up. So whenever I see a prison, it just reminds me of Prison Break and I'm like, Michael Scofield. But before we get into the prison and make it our home, what is on my top? What is this? What is this? What is that? Oh my God, I have toothpaste on my top. You didn't see anything. So before we can get into the prison and like secure it, we gotta clear the place. We gotta try and get rid of the walkers. We get the riot gear walkers. We get Maggie pulling this face. Herschel loses a leg to a walker bite, but is okay. He survives it. We then meet the small little mini group who are living in the prison, most noticeably Axel and Thomas, I think was his name. So there's a group of inmates that chose to stay in the prison instead of fighting their way out. And I loved that because, I mean, a prison, in my opinion, would be a really good place to hide out during an apocalypse. If you can get the keys to the cells, you've got so many places to hide, to hunker down and try and survive in. But it's just, I don't know, thinking of like that group that had decided to barricade themselves in. Any other time, people would have been fighting to get out, falling over each other to break out of the prison, and these guys chose to stay. So I think that's just another kind of example of how brutal this new world is if you think that you are safer and better off inside the prison. Laurie ends up giving birth and she dies. That is one of the... It's up there with the Sophia scene for me. Whatever you think about Laurie's character, whether you loved her or, you weren't so fond of her, you have a moment where you have a woman in labour giving this speech, having this moment, knowing that she's screwed, knowing that she's gonna fucking die. It was so haunting and heartbreaking. And it's one of the pivotal moments as well for Coral. I think because he witnessed that and had to be the one to put his mom down. I don't think that's something that you ever get over. I mean, he already had been through so much as a kid and as a character. He already had to deal with so much, but like this just absolutely traumatizing. So then after that, we get the no scene, which I hate. I hate that the saddest moments in the show have been memed. Like, Rick finding out that she died and that no scene. It was fucking heartbreaking, but the internet has ruined it for me. Same way as they did with Merle's death. We'll get to that in a while. But Merle's death, where Daryl's crying, you've Daryl's crying face. Stop memeing the saddest moments, please. But yeah, so Rick goes a little bit dark side. He decides to just go Rambo through the tunnels, destroy everything that he sees. He then is talking on the phone to presumably no one, and he starts seeing ghostly visions of Laurie floating around the prison. What's she doing? I don't know. Maybe her inner Sarah tapped into her and she was just floating around the place looking for Michael Scofield. We also meet up with Michonne and Andrea. We find out where they've been, what they've been up to. We're introduced to Woodbury and the governor. This is pivotal because it's one of the first examples of like a society, of a structured living section where there's somewhat of a semblance of normality left. Not much, because let's face it, the governor, there was nothing normal about that dude. I did say Woodbury and not Alexandria, didn't I? I don't know why I have Alexandria echoing through my head. But yeah, we meet the governor, we find out how he got to where he is. We learn about Penny, which is again, what is it with kids in this show and just traumatizing scenes? The scene where he is brushing Penny's hair, oh my god. We also meet Milton. That little motherfucker just annoyed my soul to no end. He was like the governor's right-hand man. I just wanted to stick pencils in his eyes. Then we take on this new Andrea governor storyline where she kind of gets with the governor. They're shagging. Glenn and Maggie end up getting captured by the governor, and that torture scene is absolutely disturbing. I mean, disturbing and like shocking and sad are all words that are going to be coming up so much in this recap. T-Dog dies saving Carol, gave up his life, rugby tackled a bunch of walkers for her. And side note, that scene where she is carried out by Daryl, or she's saved by Daryl, I don't know, the interpersonal relationships in this show, there's just so many of them and so many gorgeous moments. This is where a lot of people started shipping Daryl and Carol, and we'll get into shipping and ships and stuff in a while. But this was a big standout scene. This and the Cherokee Rose scene, where Daryl goes and gives Carol the Cherokee Rose and tells her the story behind the flower. But Daryl has these little moments, these beautiful, delicate moments where you see such softness and personality shine through, and this was definitely one of those moments. I do wish the T-Dog had lived a bit longer. I feel like he still had so much more to offer. He is one of the first examples, I think, of a truly underutilized character. But it is such a big cast, it's such a big show, the characters are always coming and going, there's always going to be characters that you want to see more of. The Daryl and the Merle scene in the Walker fighting pit, oh my god! Was that season 3 or season 4? Regardless, we're talking about it now. Whoa, when you have that moment where the hood is pulled off of Daryl's head and he's faced Merle and they kind of realise what they have to do, you see Daryl revert to this scared younger brother mentality, and it is just, oh my god, it's heartbreaking to watch and so twisted. But that scene is also kind of recreated or mirrored in a more recent episode of Dead City, where you have the Croat has a he's a little setup going in Madison Square Garden, and there is like a pit, there's like a little fighting pit set up. We see somebody be chained to a pole and they have to fight a walker, and walkers in are just thrown in, and it's kind of like sport or entertainment for people watching. I love that. I love that the shows share these moments together. This is also the season where we meet Tyrese and Sasha. They become two of the standout characters for me. I adore them. Sasha's character did not have enough screen time at all. But from start to finish, I loved her. I never got bored of her character, and same goes for Tyrese. Tyrese is just like this super strong, loyal character that is such a protective force. Sasha's death in a much later season is just, it really, I don't know, it really caught me off guard. And it also caught everybody off guard in the scene when she popped out of that coffin. But like I said, we'll get to that later. Merle also dies. See, it's so hard, because I do feel like redemption is possible for a multitude of characters. But when it comes to characters like Merle, there was a multitude of issues with that guy. And I don't believe that every character needs to be redeemed. Some characters can be bad, off, and just, you know, not right, and just, they can just be. They don't need to be redeemed. Let them be bad. And I do feel like Merle is that sort of character where he exists in the grey, where his ending exists in the grey. He wasn't, I mean, he died as like a turn for Michonne. He let Michonne go, and then he went and he tried to kill the governor himself. Didn't work out, obviously, and his death, well, it's not really his death scene. He's already dead. He's the walker, Merle, and Daryl comes and is confronted with him. That moment of these two brothers, one's dead and one is just like in shock. It's so touching, especially like as a sibling. I have a younger brother. It shook me. It really did shake me to my core, even though I didn't particularly like Merle. Some standouts from this season, for me, was the scene in the watchtower with the Polaroid. The scene where Maggie and Glenn are up in the watchtower in the prison, and it's just such a normal couple moment. You know, if you take away the fact they're sitting in a prison tower, it's so cute. And the Polaroid as well is a really like daunting foreshadowing that we haven't any clue about yet. I used to love Polaroids, and then The Walking Dead just ruined them for me. Fuck you, Negan. The Walker Pit was another standout for me. Herschel losing a leg, because I remember the first time I watched it, I really thought this motherfucker's gonna die. He is gone. But no, he wasn't. I mean, it was like distressing as all hell for everybody involved, including the people that were trying to like help him get better afterwards. But yeah, that just really stood out to me. And Michonne meeting Rick for the first time. She is one of my favourite characters. He is one of my favourite characters. But the two of them together are absolute lightning in a bottle. So the fact that this season was kind of their season for when they first met. And probably one of the standouts is also Merle's death. I don't know, there's something about seeing him chomping away on some dead skin and Daryl's face. You felt it. You felt everything in Norman's expression in that scene. So that was season 3. Moving on to season 4. I always group these two seasons together. 3 and 4 for me are always kind of like sister seasons. Same way as 6 and 7 are. So season 4 starts with disease. Everyone's living in close quarters. Someone gets sick and my God, does that shit spread like wildfire. Then we get some crispy corpses, courtesy of Carol, as we later find out. Karen, who was Tyrese's woman, got killed because she was sick. We kind of find out what the governor's been up to during this time, that he met up with a family who ended up being the Chamber family, which was Tara's family. And Tara ends up being the only one to come out of that situation alive. Governor kills Herschel, which just... I felt so bad for my mother. Let me just tell you. My mom's favourite character initially was Dale. Dale died. My mom's favourite character then, she decided, was Herschel. Herschel died. And then she went, you know what, I really like Glenn. And at this point, season 7 premiere, it had aired. I think I was somewhere mid-7. I was somewhere mid-season 7. Season 7 was airing at the time. And she's like, no, I really like Glenn. And she hadn't caught up yet. And I was like, you are truly cursed when it comes to picking favourites. But yeah, the governor kills Herschel. That scene, that liar scene. And then Maggie's face, I would go absolutely feral. I would go feral dog mode. I would drop to all fours and I would have galloped my way across that field to the governor. But the governor ends up getting killed. Shit hits the fan, as it always inevitably does. And everybody ends up getting split up again. Tyrese and Carol end up going off with Judith, Izzy and Mika as well. We find out that, oh man, I always get their names mixed up. I'm gonna have to Google it. I think it's Izzy. Wait, her name is Lizzie? I thought it was Izzy all along. Okay, well, Lizzie, as it turns out, was running these weird experiments on the creatures in the prison. She was like dissecting rats and shit. While Carol was off burning corpses, she was off cutting up rodents. But she ends up killing her sister, her younger sister Mika. And then we have the Look at the Flowers infamous scene with Carol and her. It's just it's a sad moment of like looking at these kids trying to grow and adapt in the apocalypse. It's just fucking hard, man. And it was just so incredibly sad to see her sister have to die, and then to see Carol make that decision of, oh shit, like this kid could be a problem down the line, and then she makes the decision to put her down. That's just so fucking disturbing. And I feel like that's something that really only could have happened in an earlier season of The Walking Dead. Because imagine that same shit being pulled in season 10. I don't think it would have been. For Carol as well, that has to be another I failed them moment. Not that she did, I'm not saying that she did. But like, she lost her daughter, and then she took on these two kids, and then one of them ends up being killed by the sister, and then you got to put the sister down. You got to make the decision to kill Lizzie. And it's like, Carol must have been feeling all kinds of things about that, having already lost her daughter, and now... I think kids are just cursed. Kids in The Walking Dead are just absolutely cursed. We also meet Abraham's army, which is Abraham, Eugene and Rosita, who allegedly they have a cure and they're on their way to do something about it. They are one of my favourite groups. That little trio that just rocked on in here and eventually ended up being absorbed into our group. I loved them. And I think they had one of the best examples of longevity when it comes to characters. The way they grow and change. I mean, Rosita and Eugene's relationship, from him lurking in the fucking background watching her nabe getting jiggy with it, fucking weird. But from that scene to what we end up seeing in a much later season, it's not that the feelings he had for her were gone, it's just that they were different now. you know? And then Rosita kind of sees that in him and she's like, shit, like, you must really like this new girl that you're into or whatever. But seeing them grow and seeing them have such a long-lasting friendship, it's really, it really was nice. I thought Rosita would get sick of him eventually and like bash him over the head with something, because I probably would have. But she didn't, and they ended up being like besties. Beth then gets kidnapped and robbed and taken the hell away, and we start on the road to Terminus. Couldn't find the camera there for a second. I was like, where is it? So standout for this season is the episode Still. Oh my god. I know this is like a slow burn for a lot of people, or a bottle episode. People do not like this episode. It to this day is probably my favourite episode ever. It is slow moving. It is completely a self-contained little thing that I think it's magic. I mean, you have these two characters that are so different. They couldn't be any more different. I mean, age-wise, background-wise, family-wise, life experience-wise. They're completely different. But they need to stay together to survive, to keep going. They've just survived something pretty fucked up and traumatizing. They don't know where they are, what's going to happen, where they're going. You have her setting this little thing for herself of she needed a drink. She wanted a drink. That was her goal for the episode. It was just something to keep her going, you know? Give her a fucking reason to live. And then when she finally gets it, she's like, oh my god. Like, she doesn't even want it. Because it's like, what now? But I really liked it. And I really liked the scene where they're playing I think it's Never Have I Ever. And Daryl kind of loosens up, opens up a little bit. And then she says something. I think it was Never Have I Ever Been in Jail.
I've never been in jail.
So what you think of me?
And you see this expression of like hurt or shock come across his face. And it's like, oh, you already have all these preconceived notions of me. Like, you think I've been in jail. You already think you know who I am. And then you get them taking a piss scene that leads to the two of them crying, hugging outside the Moonshine House, and the burning down and the symbolism of the burning down of the Moonshine House. I just love that fucking episode so much. It's a great character study for both Beth and Daryl. Look at the Flowers was also such a standout moment. Glenn and Maggie trying to find each other, along the road to Terminus, or agree to meet up at Terminus, whatever. They are the prime example of like, never give up, absolute ride or dies for each other. I just love it. And Terminus itself as well, what a fucking concept. It's, what evil little bollocks is there, promising that there's safety for everybody that comes here, like, we got you. It's like a lifeline. Of course you want to hear that. Of course that sounds perfect. And then you get there, and not only were they lying, but they want to fucking eat you. Trying to fucking bring in people for their own selfish gain for dinner. Bob got his own back with his tainted meat scene. That was so satisfying. But yeah, getting back on topic, we did get a bit of backstory onto the Terminus people and how they ended up where they did. But in my opinion, that just simply isn't enough. Doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it okay. It explains it, but it doesn't excuse it, how they got to where they are. We also meet the Claimed group briefly. They were a much smaller group of villains that we didn't really get a whole lot of time with. I mean, we got them in an earlier episode where Rick, we get that really tense shot of Rick underneath the bed where your man's lying on top of it and he's no idea there's a wild Rick Grimes vibing underneath him. The Claimed group, I've heard a lot of different things about online. I've seen people arguing that, like, were they that bad? I mean, you know, they had their, like, way of life or whatever. Were they really that bad compared to what we've seen? And if your take is that, then I think you need to rewatch the Claimed episodes, or the Claimed group moments, because, yeah, they're pretty fucking bad. So they try and, like, adopt Daryl into their way of life, which is the first of a few instances of groups trying to just take Daryl. I'm like, yeah, he's great, but fuck off and leave him alone. But then even Daryl is like, yeah, this is too fucking much for me, man. But the scene on the road with Rick, Michonne, the Claimed group, and Coral. I always call him Coral, because when I call him Carl, people think I'm talking about the female character Carol, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. But yeah, they threatened to, like, rape and kill Michonne and Coral, and then they threatened to kill Daryl and make Rick watch. And I'm like, how is that not the most twisted fucking shit you've ever heard in your life? These guys are low-life, shit dirtbags who deserve death in hell. But there is quite a satisfying ending. Rick biting that motherfucker's throat out is one of the coolest scenes of all time. I mean, what an absolute fucking legend. It's not enough to just kill them. No, I gotta rip out their vocal cords with my teeth. Wow. He let out his inner Walker there for a few seconds. I actually have a tapestry. I don't know where the fuck it is. I'm gonna have to look for it in a while. But it's from that season. It's Daryl with the Claimed thing over him, and it's really fucking cool. Man, the merch and the promo back then used to be absolutely magic. So, going on to season 5. My god, this video is gonna be like 12 days long. I'm sorry. We get saved from Terminus by our absolute queen, Carol. She ends up blowing the fucking place up, saving us from having our necks on the chopping board, literally, because we're hanging over a bat, about to have our throats slit. I'm pretty sure the penguin is there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the penguin is in this scene. This is also the season where we meet Dawn and Co. at Grady Memorial. They're the motherfuckers that robbed Beth. Beth has a whole side story arc going on there where she's trying to learn the ins and outs of this new group, the corruption that goes on within the group. Sadly, though, she ends up being killed by Dawn. She tries to stab Dawn and then Dawn reflexively shoots her. It's all very dramatic. It's all in slow-mo. Everyone's just in that hallway in disbelief. Daryl having to carry her out of that goddamn hospital again while Maggie just watches. Has Maggie not been through enough? She lost family members on the farm, and then she had to watch her dad be beheaded, and then she had to watch her sister's corpse be carried out of a building. Like, Jesus, that's not even touching on the Negan lineup situation. Anyway, shifting to like a happier thing. Kind of. We meet Father Gabriel, who's sitting on top of a rock. He's an absolute pussy at this point in time. He's not at all the Gabe that grows into who we know and love. He is a little scaredy cat crying up on top of a rock. We later find out that he locked his congregation out of the church and feels like real guilty about that. What a fucked up situation. We also meet Aaron, who tries his hardest to approach us like we are frightened little animals, and we still don't trust him. Our group still doesn't trust him. We don't like him, and I don't blame them. I probably would have, like, I don't know, stabbed him in the head with a rock. But thankfully they didn't, because they end up getting to Alexandria, which is to become our home for the next few seasons. It is run by Deanna and her husband Reg. I don't really remember Reg all that much. Well, he dies anyway in a few episodes, which is probably why I don't remember him. Yeah, we get to Alexandria. We're all interviewed upon entering. Rick looks like the roughest of rough, wild men you have ever seen in your life. He has been through some stuff. He has seen some shit. I have notes written about the season so I can try and stay on topic a little bit. And I totally forgot about Pete. So when we move into Alexandria, we meet all the new residents and all the new people. And naturally, because it's like a little housing estate thing, there's neighbours that are like not so great. Yeah, Pete is one of them. Pete is married to Jesse. Pete is a little piece of shit, basically, and is jealous of Rick because he thinks that Rick and Jesse have something going on. I don't really have any real feelings on Jessie as a character, to be honest with you. She wasn't really in it long enough for me to make any real connections with. I felt bad for her being in the shit situation that she was in with that absolute low-life piece of fuck. But yeah, her and Rick as a concept and as a couple, they were never really it for me. Anyway, Pete dies after killing Reg, and while all this chaos is going on at nighttime, poor Morgan skips into scene like, hey guys, and just sees absolute fuckery going on in front of him. Tyrese also dies this season, which fucking sucked, man. He was always just like strutting around, living his life, protecting the kids with his hammer. He was such a great character. This is also the season where we find out about the whole I am not a scientist situation, where, you know, Eugene finally comes clean.
Alive?
You get that moment of Abe just falling to his knees where he realizes, shit, this mission that I've been working towards is just nothing. Abraham's army made sense up until now. The three of them together, you know, you knew why they were together and where they were going and why they were doing what they were doing. But now it's like, what now? We also had the Noah death scene in the goddamn doorway. Oh my god, that revolving door of death where Noah was just pushed up against it and poor Glenn was there like... Bob also died this season. Like, season 4 and 5, my god, what a clusterfuck. So much happened. I think, did we get a sneak peek of the wolves at the end of season 5? Or was that season 6? So to recap, we have just finished season 5. We have seen the rise and fall of the Green Farm, the rise and fall of Woodbury, the rise and fall of the prison, the claimed group briefly, Terminus kind of briefly too. Terminus was a great fucking idea and setup. Not that I'm down with the cannibals, because I'm not. But it did just feel like such a huge, momentous build-up to such a quickly completed arc. You know, it was all about the build-up. It was all about the simmering and the, you know, the lead-up that, I don't know. That used to piss me off, but I think I like that now. I think I like that we had so much talk about the build-up and about, like, Terminus as a concept. And then we get there and it's like, oh, shit's fucked. Let's leave. And now we're on to the next, Alexandria. I managed to condense 3 seasons into less than half an hour. Oh my god. Lads, if I'm forgetting things or leaving things out, please don't yell at me. I'm going to do my best in editing to go in and fill in any blanks. But it's hard to include absolutely every single thing when we're trying to talk about 11 seasons of a show. But yeah, so far my favourites have been Glenn and Maggie getting together, watching them grow and develop. I've loved watching Coral as well. Yeah, he went through his angsty teen phase, and he like... I mean, he is still just a child, and he's had to deal with so fucking much. His dad got into an accident. He thought his dad died. Then there's a literal apocalypse. People are eating each other. Then he escapes the city with his mom and his dad's best friend. And then he knows something's going on between Shane and Laurie. He's fucking watching. Then his dad, surprisingly, comes back from the dead. Isn't dead. But then his dad's best friend dies and he has to shoot the corpse. Then his mom dies in childbirth. She's dying and he has to fucking put her down. It's a lot for a child to deal with. So I don't blame him for being a little bit pissy and a little bit of a angsty teenager. I mean, I'd be mad too if I had to go through like 3 seasons listening to Coral non-fucking stop. Carol has been another standout so far. She has saved our asses. She's done a lot of good in the show. Up to season 5 now. We're up to season 5. She's done a lot of good in the show so far, but she's also directly saved our lives twice. On top of all the other smart shit that she did peppered in around the place. Oh, I can't wait to talk about how Michonne and Rick start to grow together and start to get closer in the upcoming seasons. Alright, so day 3 of recording this video, and we are finally on to season 6 and 7. These are 2 of my absolute favourite seasons. I just adore them. I said it earlier in this video that I group 6 and 7 together as sister seasons, and I think it's just so special to me because that's when I really started getting into the show. I started my YouTube and my reactions and stuff around season 6. So I don't know, yeah, I think it's just special to me because of that, and because I also really just love the storyline of these 2 seasons. Anyway, so we open up the season, we have the wolves attacking. The Mad Hatter makes a random appearance in amongst the wolves as well. I know actors act in a whole bunch of different projects, but to have 2 Gotham actors pop up in the same show, that's unusual. I liked the wolves. Yeah, they were a really short-lived group of villains, I guess. They came in, they did their shit. They were like the claimed group in that way. They were bad guys. I mean, they caused chaos and havoc and got in, got out, did their thing, but it wasn't prolonged. It didn't drag on. Their story arc was too short, if anything, but I kind of liked that. Like I said, don't get me wrong, they were a bad bunch of motherfuckers. They set traps and stuff. They came across Aaron's bag, which is what led them to Alexandria. Then they came in here and this is why we can't have nice things, okay? Because they attack us. Poor Aaron, running around the place with his bag with pictures of Alexandria, accidentally led to this. In the episode JSS, we also meet Enid, who goes on to become a long-running, quite big character in the show. We learn her backstory, how tragic it is, how her parents died and she had to eat a fucking turtle. But JSS is probably one of my favourite, and a lot of people's favourite sayings from the show, just survive somehow. Where is it? I have it tattooed somewhere. Is that it? Yeah, look, boom. I got it tattooed. One thing I liked around this era was seeing Carol go into Susie Homemaker mode. You really see it come out in her in Alexandria. You see the craftiness and how smart she is come out. She knows what people perceive her to be, so she plays the fucking part to get in with people or to fit in or to slip by unnoticed. And it's a very smart character trait that she carries with her. Morgan is in his all life is precious era. Him and Carol are at odds as to what to do with the wolves. We get that flashback episode with Morgan with Eastman, where we learn the way of the stick. We learn the whole all life is precious thing. And I really liked that one. I thought that it was a good way of showing where Morgan's been, what he's been up to, and this new way of life, like where it came from, where it came about. And I really liked the recent throwback that we got in Fear the Walking Dead as well. In a recent episode, we see Morgan talking to Eastman's gravestone. So that throwback episode was super important because it really shaped Morgan's character hugely. But yeah, getting back to the season, so like Deanna dies. We find out that Maggie's pregnant. Poor Denise gets an arrow through the fucking eye and dies. God damn it, Dwight. Dwight enraged my soul. Around this time, when this was airing, he enraged my very fucking soul. He killed Denise and then he shot Daryl. Now, people have argued in regards to him shooting Daryl that it was probably doing Daryl a favour because when the lineup inevitably happens, Negan's not going to want to shoot someone who's already weak and who already looks like they're dying. But when that scene happened, my God, I wanted to rip Dwight's eyeballs out with my teeth. Carl also loses his eye thanks to fucking Ron. Oh my God. That whole family they just really annoyed me, not the Grimes. Jessie and her sons Rick. Oh, whoa, no. Jessie and her sons Ron and Sam. Listen, I put up a tweet recently about like random kiss scenes that we got from The Walking Dead, or random ass moments from The Walking Dead. And in it I had a shot of Rick and Jesse kissing. That relationship was just so wild, especially looking back now, knowing what we know, and that he ends up with Michonne, and that relationship between him and Jesse was just so fucking strange. I still think it's weird. Lots of people liked it, surprisingly. But Jesse was like an alright character. Her kids, on the other hand, my god, insufferable. So they're walking through a herd of walkers, and Sam just like freaks the fuck out, because I do feel bad, because he was still like a child, you know, but he starts whining and freaking out, and then he dies, and then his mother Jessie dies, and then Ron gets pissed off because naturally his whole family has just died, his mother, his father and his brother. So he then fucks shit up and shoots Carol in the eye. He loses his eye. Carol and Maggie get taken as well. They get kidnapped for a bit by your one from Urban Legend, of all people. There's other stuff I'm probably forgetting too, but those are the main standouts. And then finally we meet Negan and the Saviours in that whistly, muddy, grimy, freaky ass forest. I love the lineup. I love that whole scene. I love the setup. I love the lead up. I love the chaos that's going on within the scene. Maggie is sick and like clinging on to the last bit of sanity she has before she loses it due to illness. Everyone is stressed and depressed. Negan just comes stomping on into frame, and it is just, it's in my opinion, it's one of the coolest villain moments of all time. I mean, you got all of our group on their knees, hopeless. We know now who Negan killed, obviously, but watching that episode live and watching it fade to black and the credits roll, knowing that you were not going to find out what happened for months, it was one of the most infuriated I've ever been with the TV show. But I've said it time and time again, it worked. I mean, everybody was talking about it all summer long. If you talk to anybody about TV, the one question that you'd be asked is, so yeah, who do you think got it? Who died in The Walking Dead? Even people who didn't watch the show. I know a lot of people were really mad at the cliffhanger. I was at the time too. I was fucking fuming that we had to wait. I was most afraid of spoilers. I'm someone who I notoriously avoid spoilers. I barely even watch trailers for things because trailers give away too much. So I was like, oh man, it's going to be ruined. We're going to find out who was Lucille way ahead of time. But we didn't. And they shot alternate Lucille death scenes for every character in the lineup, which again, fucking genius. I forgot to mention it a minute ago, and I should have mentioned it when I was talking about Jesse and Rick. We're going back a few episodes. But Carol kind of gets with Tobin, and that was another one of those moments that had me like, what? I mean, he was an alright guy. Tobin was fine as a character, I guess. We really knew nothing about the dude. Anyway, moving back to season 7. So we jump into season 7. Everybody was just so waiting to find out who the hell got it. I really like how that episode was done. I love how it was shot. I loved the back and forth thing. I loved almost dreamlike vibe that it had at certain moments. It was, in my opinion, one of the most perfect episodes of TV. And I think it kind of does, it stands the test of time, because in my opinion, if a show isn't a sitcom, if a show is a serious, gritty show that deals with apocalypse or whatever, I really do think that shows like that are only as good as their villains. If your villains are shit, what's the point of watching? You can't watch your heroes survive or beat them or whatever. But Negan and the Saviours, holy hell. Of course, now we know Abraham and Glenn are the two who gets it, and it is, oh boy. One thing that really annoys me about the lineup is the fact that because Glenn was killed and Maggie had to watch, yes, that was really sad, and the scene of her afterwards is probably the most heartbreaking in my opinion. Even sadder than him saying I'll find you, even sadder than that was Maggie after his death, where she's just kneeling there like, you know, that shit is just sick. But something that really annoys me is that everyone forgets that Abraham died too. He's so rarely talked about when people talk about Negan, or like Negan being a bad motherfucker, or the lineup. They always bring up Glenn, and I'm like, dude, Abe was there too. Abe got boinked on the head till he died also. And him throwing up the peace sign to Sasha, which is something they'd done a couple of episodes beforehand, because him and Sasha had gotten together at this point. Oh. So Daryl is then taken by the Saviours, which leads to the nightmare fuel that is the song Easy Street. It's just so annoying because it's such an earworm. It's such a catchy song, but I can't hear it without thinking of poor Daryl eating dog food sandwiches. Eugene also gets taken, but that's not till later on in the season. We meet Oceanside thanks to Tara. Heath just fucking disappears and is never heard from again. We still don't know what happened to him. I also forgot to mention, just because there is so much going on, oh my god, so many storylines, Rick and Michonne had their first kiss. They got together. They're officially a couple now. They are my favourite couple of all time. Throughout the whole show, their storyline, how it grows and progresses, and the love that they have. They are absolute fucking endgame. Oceanside is a weird one because it's like out of all the communities that we've met in the show, I think Oceanside is one of the ones that, in hindsight, I care about the least. I mean, we did learn about their backstory, we did learn what happened, and we did learn that they had all their guys, all their men killed, including like kids and young teens and stuff. But it's like, I don't know what it is about that community. Maybe it didn't get enough time to shine or enough time on screen. Maybe it's that its story was told very strangely. I don't know. This season also has the introduction of one of my favourite characters ever, King Ezekiel, along with Jerry, Shiva and the Kingdom. I loved that shit. I loved the larger than life persona. I loved the fact that it was a facade that he put on, that he had to do and be for like his people, for them to feel they were secure, that their leader had them. And I love that moment between Carol and Zeke where they sit down, the don't bullshit a bullshitter scene, and when he comes clean and he tells her about who he was before the apocalypse, about how he came to find Shiva. I just thought it was such a gorgeous, down-to-earth, rooted moment for such a comic book character. Yeah, The Walking Dead is a comic book, but I think seeing King Ezekiel on screen for the first time was one of the first moments that it really hit me, at least, that like, whoa, this guy is comic book character, and I don't know, like, I adored him, but it was like he felt out of place almost. But as soon as he told that story, it just grounded him, and I love him. And I love Carol too. I love him and Carol together. Oh my god. We also meet the scavengers, or the junkyard people, with Jadis. We get the I lay with him after scene.
Yours?
We're together.
I lay with him after.
As someone who is very rarely speechless, that scene just knocked the wind out of me. Michonne is a bigger woman than me. It would have been clobbering time up in that junkyard. We have the spaghetti scene with Negan, of him just going in and making spaghetti, making himself right at home because Rick isn't there. And Negan's like, I'll wait. And just starts cooking. Spencer gets his guts spilt all over the floor, which is grand. He was a bit of a cunt anyway. I didn't really like his character. But that's the end of that family as well. Deanna and what's-his-face, Reg, both died, and now Spencer's dead. That's a common trope that we see quite a lot. The amount of communities, either purposefully or like by accident, that we see get murdered and slaughtered just because our group came by and was a part of us for a while is shocking. Whether they meant it or not, it was shocking. I mean, like, a lot of people bring up the Sleeping Saviors scene, which it was brutal. Yes, it fucking was. And it was just bad form. You can explain it away, but it doesn't excuse it. That being said, people bring up the Sleeping Saviors scene in defense of Negan. And I'm like, that doesn't make anything that Negan does okay. It really doesn't. You've the fact he was blackmailing everyone around him, right, left and centre. You had the multiple wives situation. You had the fact that, like, it was just his way or the highway. His way or death. His way or Lucille. Again, fantastic villain, but it's really weird, especially now since Dead City has come out. People try to almost rewrite his past or make what he did okay, and I'm like, no, you can really love and appreciate a character without just covering your eyes to the things that they've done in the past. That just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, but the Sleeping Saviors scene is one that sticks out from 6 and 7, probably more than anything. Especially because we got Arsonist's Lullaby playing in that scene, which is one of my favourite songs of all time. You also had the Polaroids in that scene as well. Them fucking Polaroids hinting at what was to come. Ugh. But that scene was really fucking dark. Going in and killing a bunch of people in their sleep, that was really dark. And I know it was a them or us kind of situation, but still. And people argue that as well with Maggie. How many husbands have you killed throughout the years? And then specifically with the Sleeping Saviors thing, it's like, really good scene though. And these 2 seasons really shoved so many like moral dilemmas down your throat that it's like people still argue about points from 6 and 7 to this day. Sasha also dies this season. That episode kept me guessing up until she popped out of the coffin. She pops out of her coffin and tries to kill Negan, which, wow. I mean, using your last moments, giving your life to try and kill this motherfucker just showed, 1, how bad he was and how he needed to be taken out, and 2, how brave she was. But that whole episode kept me guessing till the last minute. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? It was so oddly shot. But it's the kind of episode that makes so much more sense when you rewatch it. Was Benjamin introduced this season or last season? Yeah, it would have been this season. So Benjamin was introduced and also dies this season. And the only reason I bring that up is because I watched Escape Room last night and the actor is in it. And I saw his face and went, Walking Dead season 7. I really liked the finale to season 7. It's not one that really stands out a whole lot, but when you go back and you rewatch it, my god, the amount of stuff that happened in that one episode. I mean, there was a hot second that I really thought that Michonne was going to die too, when she had that savior on her. Oh, I forgot about him. Gregory was also in this season. My god, that man just truly infuriated my soul. I can't believe I forgot about him. Gregory is a character. He was former leader of Hilltop. Yeah, we also had Dwight trying to play like double agent. Dwight is one of those characters too. We really got to see him shine in Fear. In The Walking Dead, he was a saviour. You see him and Sherry, they're under Negan's rule. Sherry's one of Negan's wife. Dwight just hangs around because of Sherry. You get to see glimpses of him as like a person when you see him trying to talk to Rick or trying to make a deal with our group. It shows how much he fucking hates Negan, how much he hates the Sanctuary, yeah. But then he really gets to blossom in Fear. I don't know why. We did see glimpses of his personality in The Walking Dead, but like I feel like we didn't really get to know him until Fear. And I've really enjoyed watching his character on that show. Same goes for Morgan. I've really liked watching Morgan's character in Fear. I think the season 7 finale as well it's the perfect example of Negan nowadays. He has grown and he has changed. We're going to get into this in a different video that I'm going to do. He tries almost to really sell the whole I don't kill kids thing, and people have argued this with me and they've told me that I'm wrong, blah blah blah. But season 7's a perfect example of this. I think Negan's relationship with Coral was really interesting to watch him almost be amused and intrigued by him. But yeah, Negan was really going to fucking kill Carl in the season 7 finale, and it's like I've seen them try and explain that away by saying he didn't want to do it though. He was still gonna. If Shiva hadn't jumped in and saved the day, that bat would have boinked Coral right on the head, and he would have died a season or 2 earlier than he did. And you could argue, yeah, he was between a rock and a hard place, I suppose, especially given that talk he just had with Rick. But it still doesn't change the fact he was gonna do it. So if you really do have such a hard stance on killing kids, killing a kid kind of goes against that stance. I don't know, man. I think out of this whole show, Negan is one of the most interesting characters. Especially if you go back and you watch him and focus solely on him. He has had one of the wildest rides. He has such a weird outlook on like himself and his set of rules. To the point that it's like, dude, like, you've done fucked up shit too. I mean, the multiple wives situation. He was always pretty hardcore against rape. We saw him kill someone for trying their case with, I think it was Sasha. But coercion, these women that were married to you, that had to sleep with you, they didn't do it because they fucking wanted to. They didn't do it because they loved you. You know what I mean? But he didn't see it that way. Fascinating character to look at. And morally, probably one of the most interesting ones. So now we're moving into season 8 and 9. So in season 8, God, this is a busy season. Shiva dies, which is one of the saddest deaths of the season. I'm not even being sarcastic. I mean, watching Zeke have to see her be tore apart after she gave her life trying to save him, basically. Jumped in and tried to save the day. Morales from season 1 makes a random comeback for like an episode and is killed. He doesn't make it out the episode, but like, what a random character to bring back. We meet Georgie with Maggie. Georgie comes in and basically wants to like swap resources to try and rebuild the future, rebuild a better future, I guess. So she wants to like swap things. She wants to swap music and records and stuff. I don't think we see Georgie again in The Walking Dead, do we? She kind of swoops in with a great idealistic view on how things can be done, and then just like leaves. I think we deal with her people again, but I don't know if we see her ever again. Poor Coral gets bitten while with Sadiq. Sadiq goes on to become like the in-house doctor. We all know the doctor's curse. We've already lost a good few doctors over the seasons, and Sadiq is no exception. Poor motherfucker dies as well. But Carl anyway got bit and writes really heartfelt letters to loved ones, trying to change the future. He knows he's not going to be around for the future, so he at least tries to leave a leaving impact so that maybe he can alter the future after his death, which he does. He writes a letter to Rick, Michonne, to Negan, and Rick in the end doesn't kill Negan because of Carl's words in the note. When they're by the tree and Rick slits Negan's throat, which, whoa, shook me to my core first time I saw the episode. And then when he was just like, save him, that also shook me to my core. I was like, throat slitting is a thing that people very rarely come back from, but even in the apocalypse with limited resources, we bring Negan back. We lock him up. We make an example out of him, much to Maggie's dismay, and I don't really blame her. But yeah, that was like Coral, little genius. I mean, to pull something like that off, to get through to everybody who's arguing and fighting, even though you know that you're about to die, you're not going to be around to see the future. That's a real fucking legacy. Speaking of legacy, Simon kills all of the junkyard people except for Jadis. Traumatic scene. She's vibing in the junkyard and then like all of her people are dead. But it all works out anyway because Simon ends up dead. Negan fights him, kills him, and then puts him on the wall as a walker. Gabriel also loses his sight this season. It goes a bit hazy. Season 9, Maggie has baby Herschel and she kills Gregory because he was a little bitch and tried to lead like a murder campaign for Maggie, and Maggie just fucking killed him. That was satisfying. Dark but satisfying. And then we get to Rick's final episode. We need to talk about this one.
I found him.
When it was announced that Rick was going to be departing the show, I thought it was like a good and a bad thing that they announced it. If they hadn't announced it, we would have ended that episode thinking, ooh, Rick is just leaving and he'll be back, I guess, because when Rick blows up the bridge, everybody that's in that scene just presumes him dead, even though they later go out looking for him. Daryl never really gives up the ghost. He continues to go look for Rick. Michonne's face in that scene is so heartbreakingly sad. That is one of the best performances, I think, that the cast involved in the scene have given. But yeah, so he like blows up the bridge and then there's a hot second where it's like, Jesus, is he fucking dead? But no, he's robbed in a helicopter by Jadis. And I guess by announcing his departure from the show, you know in that final scene, oh, so this is going to be the last time that we see Rick because he's leaving. But at the same time, it did ruin the magic a bit. And The Walking Dead in later seasons, it really got into the habit of doing this. It got into the habit of spoiling its own show, of telling you these major milestones before they happened. I guess in a way, yeah, you could let your viewers prepare, but it also completely stole a lot of momentum from the episodes and from the moments. We also meet the new group in this season. So we meet Yumiko, Magna, Connie, Kelly and Luke. I really liked this group. It was time for a new bunch of characters and I really liked them a lot. I loved Luke's thing with the Stradivarius. So I was lucky enough to get to interview Dan Fogler, who plays Luke. I've interviewed a good few of the cast and crew from The Walking Dead, and there's a playlist on my channel if you haven't seen them. But when I talked to Dan, he talked about that scene, the scene with the Stradivarius, and I think it was really gorgeous the way he phrased it. That he said that, you know, Luke holding on to the Stradivarius, which is a musical instrument, if you guys don't remember, it's a way of him holding on to humanity or holding on to what was. That somebody would care about something that would be seen as so trivial nowadays in the apocalypse, but he still cared, and it's part of what kept him so grounded and so human.
And clinging to like the old ways. And he's hoping that someday things will go back to normal or semi-normal, and he'll be able to teach music class again. And that's where he's coming from. He's with the Stradivarius, like that's why it's so important to him. It's like it's a person, you know.
Yeah.
It's history. It's our human history.
Because this new group, they're really like normal. I mean, if you survived this long in the apocalypse, you've seen some shit, you've done some shit, but they seemed nice. I was going to say unaffected, but they're not unaffected. They were very affected by everything that had happened. But yeah, I really like that group a lot. And if we're talking about shipping, I always shipped Connie and Daryl. I did. Daryl is an interesting character when it comes to shipping because he's just someone who, we'll talk about it, up until this point, he'd never gotten with anybody. And you could kind of ship him with whoever you wanted, whoever you felt that he clicked with in your head. You could be like, well, yeah, they are my ship. I love them. But I really felt it with Connie and him. There was just, I don't know, there was a number of scenes with the two of them. It was effortless in my opinion. What makes me sad though is when shippers get mad and attack each other. It's like, it's a fictional show. It's made up, it's made believe. See what you want to see in it. Project what you want to project onto the characters. But don't get mad at other people for doing the same thing. It really makes me sad when you see people calling each other names or attacking each other. Not just over like Daryl as a character in a ship. I mean like any ships in the show. I see it a lot online and it just fucking sucks. The show is supposed to be a fun, safe place that you can escape to and have fun with and enjoy. It's not supposed to be something that you argue with people over. Anyway, so there's been a time jump. Judith is now grown up and a badass. Would you expect anything less? No. We all knew she was going to grow up to be a little badass. We get the flashback episode with Michonne where we see her having to like mow down a whole bunch of kids, because that whole episode was it was just fucked up. It was absolutely demented. And I think that's one of the best acting performances that we have gotten from Denai. Wow. The kind of daunting episode that just shakes you to your core. So maybe I was wrong earlier, because I said it about the Izzy Amika thing, or the Lizzie Amika thing, that maybe we wouldn't have seen that in a later season. I don't know, this episode? Oof. So then it's enter the Whisperers. Jesus gets killed in the graveyard. Such a spooky death scene. And I thought he'd be okay. Like, he got stabbed through the chest, but I thought, well, you know, Negan got his throat slashed and was fine. Other people have, like, had whole legs cut off and lived. Maybe he'll be okay. No, we had to throw him up over the back of the horse and carry his corpse home. But that was so creepy. And I think it's just the idea. I don't like whispering as a concept. It unnerves me. Before the Whisperers ever did. It annoys me. So having them whisper in the fucking fog or whisper out in the forests, wherever they be lurking, it's genius though. Putting on the skin of the dead and walking with the dead, it is absolutely genius. But yeah, regarding Jesus, I was kind of hoping to see him get with Aaron. I've seen people say that they did get together, or that it was kind of canon or made canon at some stage, but I would have liked to see them properly get together and be a couple. Because Aaron is one of those characters as well, who he started off as a smaller side character. We saw him go through meeting our group, trying to kind of get used to us and get accustomed to us. We saw him had to go through the grief of losing Eric. We saw him go through raising Gracie as well. I really like him. And the bonus episode between Aaron and Gabe that comes later on into season 10, one of my favourite episodes in The Walking Dead ever. But yeah, the Whisperers, they're just a group of fucking psychopaths led by Alpha. She's an abusive mother. Her daughter Lydia later goes on to become part of our group, and she's absorbed in with our people, thank God, because I fully believe that she would have just died if she'd stayed with the Whisperers. We also meet Alpha's right hand man Beta, who is like 7'5" and just follows her everywhere. The girl from Hocus Pocus is also part of the Whisperer group. And then the end of the season, things just go balls to the wall nuts. So we get the fair episode and the fair scene, which leads to the Pike scene, which is a bunch of our group's heads up on sticks, courtesy of fucking Alpha. It's another perfect example of putting the perfect dosage of fucked upness into an episode to show you the brutality of this world. And like I said earlier, the people that have survived this long, they've been through shit and they've seen some shit. But some people have just gone wrong mentally. And Alpha is one of them. This fucking scene. And I know that's the whole point of The Walking Dead. The whole point is that the people are scarier than the walkers. But these motherfuckers really are scarier than the walkers. So Tara and Enid were killed. Henry was also killed, who had become Carol and Zeke's kid, which then goes on to impact their relationship. And they're never really the same together afterwards. And I loved them as a couple. Can't really blame them though, my God, losing a kid, especially that way. And it does somewhat mirror the Sophia Barnes scene where you have Carol walking up to see yet another kid. Seeing her take yet another loss when it comes to a child is just like, how much more can one woman take? And then we end it all with one of my favourite visuals from the show ever, the snow episode, the snow scenes where there's a blizzard coming in, you have frozen walkers, and that's something that I didn't really touch on, but they're always coming up with new ways to kill walkers throughout the show. It's not just an arrow through the head, or a knife through the temple, or a fun wire connected between two cars that just mows walkers down. They get so creative with them, and in this episode, because they're frozen, you can just knock their head off their shoulders with a bit of a you know, and you get that crunchy sound of the icicle head crushing. So Negan wanders off to save Judith in the middle of the storm. Carol also stops Lydia from letting herself be bitten. We have the very touching scene where Lydia is sitting on her knees in front of a walker, just waiting, a hand extended, waiting for the walker to get her. And we have that gorgeous moment then between Carol and Lydia in the barn afterwards, or in the little shack thing afterwards. So yeah, that was 8 and 9. My God. So we're going to do 10, the bonus episodes, and 11 tomorrow. Alright, we are finally onto the final 2 seasons. Time to talk about season 10, the bonus episodes, and season 11. Before I mention that, I forgot to mention that with the last few seasons, particularly the last season, Michonne got pregnant and had Rick's baby that Rick never fucking met. Rick never even got to meet RJ. So 10A is trippy. It opens with like a satellite falling down to Earth. I feel bad for the fucking astronauts, man. I completely forgot about that. The other people that were just out there living their lives when the world fell astronauts just got stuck in space. Negan ends up joining the Whisperers. We then get that infamous kiss between the two of them. They shag in the forest, socks on. Ezekiel gets sick. He has thyroid cancer. We also get a kiss between him and Michonne, which you can explain it away as to why it happened. Zeke was in a very vulnerable place, but still, that was absolutely wild to see on a screen. Negan saves Lydia's life because there's a bunch of bully motherfuckers at her. He saves her and is somehow made out to be the bad guy. And in this instance, no, I agree with him. He did the right thing. He then goes off and meets Brendan, or was it Brandon? He meets this fucking kid that, like, brings back to the surface the Whisperer days. And I think that's going to be something that haunts Negan for the rest of his life. No matter where he goes, the story of the Saviours. Did I say Whisperers a minute ago? Because I meant to say the Saviours. The story of the Saviours is going to pop up. People have been telling it like it's an old cautionary tale, but you're also going to meet the old supporters or ex-Saviours, like we meet the Croat in Dead City. But again, different show, we're not focusing on that just yet. Fucking Dante, we get that really unsettling or nervous episode between Dante and Sadiq, where Dante ends up killing Sadiq. But there was a moment I was like, okay, they're either going to kiss or someone's going to kill someone. It was very tense. Then we have the cave situation. Our group, Carol and Daryl, Jerry, Connie, Aaron, they go through a cave. They get stuck in this cave. It's very claustrophobic. We make it out of the cave, but the cave collapses. Some of us get stuck in there. We don't know what happens. Connie, we think she might have died, but she didn't. She makes it out, that we find later on. We also have that trippy episode with Michonne. She meets Virgil, or she's with Virgil. There's like a hallucinogenic tripping balls moment where we get to see, I thought that was very interesting, we get to see her in place of Negan in the lineup. The visuals were top notch in this episode. It was really weird and very un-Walking Dead-like, the dream sequence that she was tripping. Still really fun to watch. So she then goes off to try and find Rick, which is understandable. I mean, she found why can't I speak today? She found a phone that had a little drawing carving on the back, and she found his boots. She found the brave man's boots. She knows that he's alive. She knows that he's out there. I don't blame her at all for going off to look for him. Her kids are safe. She knows they're safe and they're in good hands. So she leaves Judith and RJ in order to go search for Rick. I did find it a bit strange that Judith didn't fucking tell anyone. The only person that Michonne told was Judith, right? She told Judith, I'm going to go try find him. I think he might be alive. Judith doesn't tell anybody. We also have Eugene talking on a walkie-talkie, striking up a relationship and falling in love, having a bit of an online or an on-the-radio waves relationship with Stephanie, where we learn about this new community that's still very kept under wraps and very suspicious. We meet Princess, who has one of the coolest intros of any character. Princess is just simply vibing by herself, mannequins set up all over the place. Oh my god, hi! She's someone who is a perfect example of isolation isn't really for everyone. I mean, we meet her, she's doing fine, she's coping okay, but she just seems so disconnected from everything that's been going on. She seems so different from every other character that we had met. But I loved hearing her story. I loved hearing her background. She is one of the funnest characters and one of the most interesting ones, in my opinion, of the new characters that were introduced in the back half of the show. So Negan kills Alpha. We find out he's been working with Carol all along. We get the took you long enough moment. We get a distraught Beta just carrying Alpha's head around the place as if he's in some Shakespearean play. And then we have the bonus episodes. I really liked the bonus episodes. I mean, they were released in such an uncertain time. People have said that they're unnecessary. People have said that they're skippable or whatever. And I guess, yeah, you don't really need to watch them to keep up with the story. Some of them were, in my opinion, some of the best episodes that we got. The episode where Carol is like running around the place, was she trying to catch a rat or something? I don't know. That episode seemed a bit unnecessary to me, yes. But it still was heartwarming to see her connect with Jerry in that episode. And I really did like that. I liked watching the two of them together. Him giving her like a task, him saying like, oh, you know, I could do with some food or something, and her being like, that I can do. It's just interesting seeing the character dynamics. Here's Negan is one of the best episodes in Walking Dead history, whether you love him or you hate him. I think it is truly one of the best episodes. And then you have the fact that it was Jeffrey's wife that played Lucille, so the on-screen chemistry was just off the fucking charts. That was an origin story done so fucking well. I mentioned earlier, but the episode where we get Gabriel and Aaron together, they have a drink, they end up with that guy. I think it's because Gabe and Aaron, they didn't get a whole lot of time to shine in more recent episodes. I mean, we do have side storylines, like Gabe gets with Rosita, and like I said, Aaron adopts Gracie. But like, I don't know, they just don't get a whole lot of screen time, or they don't get a whole lot of time, particularly with each other. And seeing them interact in this episode, I absolutely adored it. I loved it. I really, really did. Watching them get pissed drunk and talk a bit about their past and open up to each other, it was just such a rooted in basic humanity scene. The episode as well in the train cart that's mostly dealing with the princess, that episode I loved. I think, was it called Splinter? I think it was called Splinter. I really liked that one because, again, it was just such a self-contained and almost anthology style episode where you're so claustrophobic. You were in that episode with the character. You were right there with Princess. You get to learn about her upbringing pre-apocalypse. You get to learn so much about her that makes her her. And kind of like with Ezekiel, that facade that she had of being this larger than life, straight from the comic book pages character, in that one episode she is made human and she's brought back down to earth, and she just it fleshes out her character so well. And also with that episode, I mean, Ezekiel throughout that episode was a figment of her imagination, but we don't find that out until towards the end of the episode. And seeing Zeke, you know, go a little bit dark side was just so different and insane. I liked the bonus episodes. I really, really did. I don't know. I think as well, because everything came to a standstill regarding filming and stuff. I think it was a really creative way to keep the show going, keep the story going in such an uncertain time. And being given, 6 bonus episodes when you thought you weren't going to get any new episodes from the show for a very long time. During such uncertain times, it was just a little ray of sunshine. Yeah, we also got the episode with Daryl and Leah. Now, this was super important because it introduced Leah and she goes on to become part of the Reapers storyline. So it does make sense as to why they'd want to introduce her and give her some kind of grounded backstory before we jump straight into season 11 and just plop her in. But she still just felt plopped in as a character. I mean, I've seen people online say they like her character, say that she didn't deserve the hate that she got. And I do agree with that. Like, I don't think anybody deserves hate for playing a character. That's just fucking ridiculous. I don't know, she was introduced into this episode and then all of a sudden you have a character like Daryl that had never really explicitly been made canon with another character. You have these two just strike up a relationship and it's told mostly through flashbacks, and it felt so shoved in last minute. I didn't vibe with that storyline. Alright, so then season 11, the last season of The Walking Dead. The Reapers was another kind of Wolves-style villain or claimed group-style villain. The Reapers don't survive that long. They end up being just demolished. Daryl ends up being the one to kill Leah because he's pushed to his limits. He has to. Alden is also killed, and Alden's death was very strange. I guess they were trying to pull the whole prolonged will he die, won't he die thing, but when we left him, our group left him in a church. When we left him in the church, we knew that he was going to die. We meet the Commonwealth. We get to go in and see this new community that it does feel very Woodbury 2.0. Just a bit more better run, But as we get more into it, as we learn more about this new community, we learn about the corruption within the ranks. Our group has to join this new community and kind of assimilate. They get jobs, they take on roles within the community. We see Daryl becoming Uncle Daryl. Fully, he takes on, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not leadership. The parental role of RJ and Judith. One of the standout, most emotional scenes from this season was when Lydia has to lose an arm. They're in the RV. It's very reminiscent of Dale's RV. So again, we get moments like that where things are put in and it's like, I don't know, am I picking up on things where I shouldn't be? Or going, oh my God, that's just like the thing back earlier. But this did remind me of Dale's RV. She gets her arm cut off. And we have that moment between her, Jerry and Aaron just before her arm is cut off, and it is just it's so beautiful seeing how she's become such a loved and valued member of our group now, given how she entered the show with the Whisperers.
You are so loved, Lydia.
Yeah, and regarding Lydia's character too, I don't think I talked about it. After the downfall of the Whisperers, Alpha's mask, you see it floating kind of through the air as a herd of walkers goes over a cliff, and her and Carol are sitting huddled by the edge of the cliff, and it is just such a gorgeous moment of like letting go. That Lydia, much like Carol or much like Daryl, she is that survivor character. She is that character that beat the odds and made it out the other side, lived through horrendous situations, lived through horrendous abuse, and made it out. Jules and Luke both die. They don't make it out of this season. They both catch the death. Luke, look, he was such a strange character. He got such a big intro. Luke got such a big intro, right? When he entered the show with his group, I mean, we did kind of focus on him quite a bit. We got that big story from him about the Stradivarius. And he seemed like he was going to be this larger-than-life character. Now, I know that Dan, the actor, also was doing Fantastic Beasts at the time, which I think is why his character was sidelined for such a large portion of the show, because he was working on another project. He just didn't... Look, I don't know fuck all. I'll be the first to say it. I know nothing. But I presume he didn't have the time, I guess, for any major scenes or any major plot points or storylines in The Walking Dead. But they did just bring him back just to kill him. They were like, oh yeah, remember Luke? Yeah, he dies. Look at him, being dead. Like, oh, okay. Rosita also doesn't make it out of this season. That scene where we're all sitting down for dinner and she's just smiling, watching everyone when she knows she doesn't have much time left. She knows she's not going to live to see Coco, her kid, grow up. It's so sad. And it did kind of remind me a little bit of Laurie's death, where you had Laurie, you had this mom who knew they weren't going to live to see their kids grow up, but still were happy just because their kids get to go on, you know? Mercier was another huge character this season, and a guy that really stuck out for me. He kind of reminded me of Dwight in a way. He was somebody who was living and existing within this community, doing what he had to do, but he knew that shit was fucked. He knew that he wasn't happy with how things were being ran. And in the end, he ends up being the one to arrest Pam, and he gets to be the one to put Pam behind bars. His little progression throughout this season as well. Like I said, it really reminded me of, Dwight. We end the show then with a bit of a time jump. All of the stuff has been fixed. All of the corruption, well, can you ever really truly stamp out corruption? Probably not. But most of the corruption has been sorted. We got new people now in running the business. Ezekiel, Mercer and I think Carol have taken on leadership roles, so we know that our communities are in good hands. We know that we have a good solid future. And I really liked how the show ended. It ended with Judith talking to RJ, and it ends with the words, "We're the ones who live." And I feel like that scene is not talked about enough, because it isn't, because there's a after credits scene where we see Rick on the run from the Civic Republic, and then you see Michonne trying to find him, and you have that gorgeous scene of them looking at each other from over the fire, but at different times because they're not together. She's looking for him, he's just trying to fucking escape, and then you see her take off at a gallop. It's such a cool fucking scene, knowing then that that's setting them up for their spin-off, that they're going to get their own show. The Walking Dead's going to live on. It's not over just yet. But like, that scene really does overshadow the final closing scene of the show. The scene between Judith and RJ. She will be a leader someday. Her and RJ will be leaders of communities someday. Her story was so interesting to watch. From someone, we watched her literally from conception to being in Laurie's belly, to being born, to being passed around from person to person to person. I mean, how many people died protecting her and keeping her safe? And yeah, just seeing her now standing at the end of the show, at the end of the main show, getting ready for whatever the hell comes next. I loved that as an ending. There's just moments that stand out as a whole when you talk about the series, like the actual show as an entity. I mean, like I said, it's hard to include every single thing that happens season by season. I'm going to be doing some character based videos, so I will be getting in much more into detail into certain characters. But this was just an overview of the show and the standout moments and stuff like that. But it is hard to include everything. The storm scene where, I think it was in season 11, we end up in a flooded basement and you see Aaron climbing along the pipes. That shit was just so horror, you know? Or the episode where Connie and Virgil are together in that haunted house. Again, so old school horror. And I like that we didn't lose those vibes. There is little moments like that injected throughout the show's 11 seasons to remind you, hey, yeah, you're watching a drama show about the people, but also it's a horror show, and they don't let you forget it. I touched a bit on how I like how they kept the walkers fresh, no pun intended. They kept finding new ways to kill walkers to make it interesting. I think Pam, as like a villain or as a corrupt leader, she wasn't really it for me. I didn't really find her to be like governor level or, you know, Negan level. I mean, she and her community was the last big bad, and you're coming straight off the heels of the Whisperers and then the Reapers, and then going in here. I mean, it's smart, I guess, because it is just like a corrupt society, which is, in my opinion, so much harder to deal with than a bunch of people out there wearing dead people masks, roaming around in the forest, whispering to each other. Sorry, the whistling was Negan. This is more complicated, it's more complex. So I guess I see in a way it was a very interesting note to end on. But getting to see like balls and galas and shit like that happen in The Walking Dead was just so nuts. I really, really liked it. Another standout moment, obviously I mentioned before, my favourite episode is the episode Still. Daryl's my favourite character. Yeah, I adore that man. But there's a moment between him and Carol. They're looking for Beth. We're going back seasons now. But he pulls a bag and out slips like a self-help book. out of the bag. And there's a moment between him and Carol where I feel like they both really just understand each other. They lock in that moment. And it's crazy that the apocalypse made Daryl the person that he is, because God knows, well, you could say that for any of the characters. God knows where any of them would have ended up had the apocalypse not hit. But Daryl definitely would not have ended up who he did. Guardian pretty much of Judith and RJ. Or Maggie, you know, who started out being the farmer's daughter. Now she's the widow and the leader of communities. And Rick and Michonne, who, you know, Michonne is going to go to the ends of the earth to find him and to bring him home to their kids. I mean, there's so much that can be said about so many of the characters in the show. Like I said, I'm going to do a detailed deep dive into certain characters. I think if this video goes down well and if you guys enjoyed this level of detail, or as detailed as I could make it, I really did try. Like I said, there's 11 seasons. But yeah, overall 11 seasons. It had its ups, it had its downs. I think it was a nice ending. I thought it was a gorgeous way to close out the show while still leaving it open-ended enough that you know that anyone that didn't die, the possibility for them to pop up in spin-offs is still there, you know, if they want, or if they can be written into the spin-off storylines. But it was a nice, clean, cohesive way to end it. And they didn't dance on our dreams and ruin our fucking feelings by just destroying everything, burning it all down and killing everyone. And there was a time I would have wanted to see that. There was a time that's how I wanted the show to end. But I'm so glad it didn't. But yeah, I mean, so many characters along the way that you just fucking forget about when you think about the show on a broader spectrum. So many pockets of villains here and there. Like I said, the Reapers. Even though the Reapers are so recent, but still, like, they slipped my mind until I started researching for this video. I was like, fuck yeah, they were a thing that happened. Same with the Claimed group, or same with the Wolves. So smaller people that get kind of pushed to the side because of the bigger villains, I guess. I mean, when you have villains like the Governor, Terminus, Saviors, Whisperers, it's easy to kind of forget about the smaller ones. But yeah. But those are the 11 seasons of The Walking Dead. What's my takeaway? It's a great post-apocalyptic show. It does personal drama on a fantastic level. There's times you forget you're watching a horror show. There are times that you are so sucked in by the drama and the people, be it love triangles or be it personal dynamics. You are so fucking invested and you grow to love and care about these characters. Again, it was on air for 11 years. You're going to get invested with these characters in a way that's just like guttural, you know, and visceral. Like Daryl, I love him. I don't even give a fuck. I used to get made fun of an awful lot back in the day for being like a fangirl, and I'm like, fuck you, I don't care. That's for you. He's been one of my favourite characters now for like 6 years. So many like writers, directors, producers, actors, cast, crew, so many people gave their blood, sweat and tears for fucking years for this show. And I do think this is one of the greats and it will stand the test of time. When you think about successful long-running TV shows, The Walking Dead is going to be up on that shelf forever, hopefully. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. What were some of your favourite seasons, some of your favourite standout moments regarding the show, some favourite character plots. Like I said, I'm going to be doing some character profiles in the upcoming weeks. They will take a good amount of time to film and edit, so I'm not giving no dates or no idea of when they're going up just yet, but they are on the horizon. And yeah, thank you so much for watching if you have watched this much, and I will talk to you all soon.